News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. And there's your closing bell for this Thursday on Wall Street, where volatility surged across U.S. asset classes, President Trump's trade offensive, and tariff threats exacerbating economic growth concerns. That has led to a retreat from risk and a sell-off in equities. And, of course, we bring you the closing numbers each day here at Bloomberg. The NASDAQ is down 1.96%, almost 2%. That's a loss of 345 points. The Dow is down 537 points, or 1.3%, and the S&P 500 is down 1.4%. That's about 78 points. That's more than wiped out a modest gain from yesterday, leaving the index down 10% from its February record high. That meets the technical threshold for a correction. The S&P 500, by the way, has now wiped out about $5 trillion in market capitalization since it peaked in February. The 10-year Treasury yield 4.26%, and the 2-year yield is at 3.94%. And that's despite a double dose of good economic news. The government says weekly jobless claim dropped to the lowest since mid-February, not counting the federal government job cuts. And producer prices held steady last month, the first month without an increase since July. But markets are worried about a potential trade war. President Trump is threatening a 200% tariff on European wine, champagne, and other alcoholic beverages if the EU does not immediately remove countermeasures against his 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum. Former Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin tells Bloomberg TV the resulting market swoon is a natural correction.
We came in with the market being fully priced. So I think a 5 to 10% correction on the S&P or the NASDAQ actually makes sense. The market's been really fueled by massive amounts of tech spending, particularly around AI. So some of this is a natural correction in the market, and some of this is the market worrying about tariffs and the impact on tariffs.
Mnuchin says he does not expect a recession at all, and President Trump says he will not cave on Canada's tariffs.
We've been ripped off for years, and we're not going to be ripped off anymore. No, I'm not going to bend at all. Aluminum or steel or cars. We're not going to bend.
But don't expect the Fed to come to the rescue if tariffs damage the economy. That's according to former New York Fed President William Dudley. He says the fallout from these tariffs could be worse than during the first Trump administration.
Trump administration is making the matter worse because not only are they putting tariffs in place that are much larger than they did during the first term, they're doing it in a very haphazard, irregular way, which is creating a lot of uncertainty. The decline in merger activity in the 4 months of this year is pretty striking. People expected merger activity to pick up with the Trump administration. It's actually gone down because nobody knows what the rules of the game are going to be.
Bill Dudley, now a Bloomberg opinion columnist, says the Fed could be in a bind if tariffs lead to slower growth and higher inflation expectations. You can read more in his latest column at Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the Bloomberg terminal. In world news, Russian President Vladimir Putin says his country is ready to agree to a ceasefire proposal if it leads to a long-lasting peace. Details still need to be discussed, including with President Trump. The president called this promising.
Well, we'd like to see a ceasefire from Russia. And we have, not been working in the dark. We've been discussing with Ukraine land.
There is a question as to who will monitor the ceasefire, and Putin wants Ukrainian soldiers in the Kursk region to lay down their arms. The Trump administration is asking the Supreme Court to allow restrictions on birthright citizenship to partly take effect while legal fights play out. 3 federal appeals courts have already rejected the administration's pleas. The order would deny citizenship to those born after February 19th whose parents are in the country illegally, and it forbids U.S. agencies from issuing any documents or accepting any state document recognizing citizenship for those children. And now a federal judge has ordered the Trump administration to rehire thousands of government workers who were terminated in early February. The judge ruled the Office of Personnel Management's order to federal agency heads to fire probationary employees was illegal. That order requires the VA, Energy, Interior, Agriculture, and Treasury to rehire the fired employees. That's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris, and this is Bloomberg.